Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to the School of Personal Finance. So even though interest rates have come down a little bit over the last few weeks, we are still at 20-year highs, and we're really starting to see it trickle throughout the economy. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 5 ways that these higher interest rates are really killing the middle class. And we really don't see an end in sight. If you listen to the Federal Reserve, they keep preaching higher for longer, meaning they want to keep these rates higher for longer periods of time until something breaks. So I think until we start to see job losses and this economy really start to contract before they will start to lower interest rates. So I'm going to show you some examples, do some comparisons where if you bought something 3 years ago compared to now, you know how much the cost has gone up because of these crazy financing, and also give you some strategies or ways to try to get yourself through this time. All right, let's get to it. All right, real quick before we start, head over to schoolofpersonalfinance.com, sign up for my newsletter, download my free budget template and net worth tracker. Make sure to follow me on Instagram, connect with me on LinkedIn, on Facebook. My only mission is to help you become great with your money. All right, so the first way that these higher rates are killing the middle class, it is with credit cards, revolving debt, personal lines of credit, personal loans. All of these, the interest rates, they always suck. But now they suck even more than normal. So if you have any of these, you really need to prioritize getting yourself out from underneath them, because the interest, it could just snowball on you. Some credit cards, you see them where they're like 28%. Like that's just not possible to be able to pay that if you are living paycheck to paycheck. So you have to figure it out. You have to look at your money in versus money out and come up with a plan and prioritize getting out of that debt. And if that means having less in an emergency fund, if it means not saving for retirement, you have to put those things on pause so you could get out of these high interest rate debts, because they will end up burying you. Now, I'm usually hesitant to recommend those 0% promo cards and doing balance transfers, because what happens a lot of times is you transfer the balance over and then you use the old card again and you rack that up again. And now you find yourself in more debt than you were before. But in this rate environment, if you could get focused and you could find the 0% promo rate, transfer the balance, cut up the old card, don't use it anymore, and focus everything you have on paying off that balance on the credit card before the promotional rate expires, then I think that could strategically be a very smart move. You just have to be careful. And you typically have to have good credit in order to get these promotional rates. All right, and then the second way these high interest rates are killing us is with car loans. So now the price of cars, they've gone nowhere but up over the last 5 years. They're really becoming unaffordable. The average loan on a new purchase is around $40,000, and people are financing them over longer periods of time. So if you buy a new car and you finance $40,000 and you do it over 72 months, which is 6 years, that payment is going to be right around $700 a month. Where if we rewind just a few years, first of all, you could have bought a much nicer car for $40,000. But the interest rates were basically half. So if you're able to get a 4% loan for 40 grand and do it over 72 months, then that would be around $625 a month. So just the cost of financing is $75 a month now with these higher interest rates. So my best advice for people, if you need a new car, try to put it off, right? Unless you really need one, right? If you really need one, then the best thing to do is to buy a car that's coming off lease. Don't buy a brand new car. Find something that is 3 years old, that only has maybe 35,000 miles on it and is still in good condition, and finance that instead. Leasing a car is the most expensive way that you could have a car, right? So every 3 years you do a 36-month lease, you have to start over. The payments never go away, and the prices, they always go up. So your payments go up every 3 years, you got to throw some money down, and you just never get out from underneath a car payment. There's nothing better in the world than not having a car payment. The best scenario right now is you kick the can down the road and you drive the car that you have until it's not drivable anymore, even if that means you putting a few $1,000s into it to make it run for a few more years. All right, and now the third way these high rates are killing us, this is probably the most painful for a lot of people out there, especially first-time home buyers, and that is these mortgage rates. So current mortgage rates, they pulled back a little bit over the last week, but we're still right around 7.75% for a highly qualified loan applicant for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. So that is tough. All right, and home prices, they really have not come down. I mean, depending on where you are in the country, where I am in Westchester County, New York, home prices, they are still as high as they've ever been. And there's very little inventory. So it is very hard if you are looking for a home right now and you're a first-time home buyer. But just to show a little example, right? If you're looking to buy a house, let's say $500,000, and you're able to put 20% down, so that means you're going to get a $400,000 loan at 7.75%, that monthly payment, just the principal and interest, is around $2,866. So that is a big payment for a $500,000 house. You throw the taxes and insurance on it, and it becomes almost unaffordable. Now, just a few years ago, you were able to get a mortgage at 3.75%. So in that same scenario, buying a $500,000 house, putting 100 grand down, financing 400,000 at 3.75%, the payment was about $1,000 less a month. So that is a very big difference. So through no fault of your own, right, you have to pay $1,000 more a month for the same house that somebody else was able to buy just a few years ago. Just to make you feel worse about it, if you're able to afford that $2,866 a month payment right now, because everybody's incomes are up, maybe you have some savings and you're able to actually afford that payment, a few years ago with the lower financing, the lower interest rates at 3.75%, you would have been able to buy a house worth $720,000 instead of having to buy a house worth $500,000. So it's a very tough environment to be able to afford a house, buy a house. Rents are up as well. So there's really no reprieve out there. It's just very difficult. And I always say that it's a great idea to go in with 20%. If you don't have the 20% down payment, it just makes it more expensive because now you're financing more. You have PMI that's included in there. So if you don't have it, you really want to wait until you're on very solid financial ground. You don't want to be in a huge rush to go out and buy a house right now where the prices where they're at, the interest rates where they're at. Like, we don't know where things are going to go in the future. Home prices could continue to go up. But if you can't afford it, don't put that financial stress upon yourself right now. And then number 4 are for existing homeowners out there that have home equity lines of credit. So I personally have a home equity line of credit. I've used it many times in my life. I used it to invest in rental properties. I used it once to buy a car. And the rates, they're tied to the prime rate. So the prime rate was as low as like 3.25%, whereas now it's up at 8.5%. And the rates are variable with a home equity line of credit, so it changes with the prime. And sometimes it could be prime plus a half, prime plus a quarter. It could be prime minus a quarter. So you have to look at what your current rate is. But the rates on these, they've more than doubled. So for example, if you have $100,000 outstanding on the home equity line of credit at 8.5%, you're able to pay interest only for a certain period of time. So the interest payments, that would be $8,500 a year. So that's a little bit over $700 a month in interest payments, where just a few years ago, if your rate was 4% and you owed $100,000, then the interest payment was $4,000 for the year, or $333 a month. So the interest payments, they have doubled. So what does that do? It causes people to not want to use the home equity lines of credit, right? I'm not using mine at all. The last thing I want to do right now is use my HELOC to go buy an investment property, because the financing, the cost is just way up and I can't make the numbers work, right? So these high interest rates, they cause people to pull back on investments. If I wanted to do a home improvement right now and use my home equity line of credit, let's say I wanted to put a pool in my backyard, I'm not doing that right now. The cost is just too high for me to borrow against it. So unless I have the cash saved up to do these purchases, I'm not looking to finance them through these home equity lines of credit right now. And then the 5th way these high rates are killing us is if you're a small business owner, right? And you use financing, maybe to finance inventory or machinery, or you're looking to expand. It's just not easy to do that right now, right? You have to do a very tight calculation of what the cost of capital is and what the return you could get on it, and if it makes sense. So these high interest rates, they cause recessions, right? When the money was very cheap, people were just going out and making investments because they had basically free money to borrow to go get some growth for their business. But now that cost is very high, so people are not doing that anymore. So the whole point of all this, of keeping these interest rates higher for longer, is because the Fed wants to bring down inflation. They want to protect consumers from these high interest rates and the high cost of living, but we have to go through pain in order to get there. People are going to lose jobs, and that's what's going to eventually bring down inflation. These are the business cycles that we go through. But now we're at a point where it's painful, and you have to be careful, and you have to make sure to make smart decisions. So save money, pay down debt, right? Take things slowly, make sure you're on secure ground. This is not a time to take big risks in your life, especially if you are carrying this high interest debt. All right, everyone, I hope that you found this one helpful. Again, make sure to check out schoolofpersonalfinance.com, get on my email list, make sure to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button if you enjoyed this one. I'll see you again in the next video. Thanks.